This video presents a communication that was presented at Analytica 2020. The title of the presentation is Quality in Chemical Analysis, the Key to the Reproducibility Crisis. In this presentation, first I will discuss the type of chemical analysis, then their socioeconomic relevance, and after this introductory part I will discuss the principles and some challenges of measurements in chemistry and examinations in chemistry, and I will finish with some final remarks. So we all know that chemical analysis can be quantitative measurements and qualitative examinations. The term examination was introduced in 2012 at the International Vocabulary of Metrology. Therefore, metrology is the science of measurements and its applications, and examinology the science of examinations and its applications. So these are the two sciences that study how to produce measurement and examination results that are fit for a specific application. I would like also to remind that most measurements are performed after a previous examination. So therefore, if the qualitative analysis is not adequate, the measurement will of course be inadequate. Regarding the socioeconomic relevance of chemical analysis, let me give you some numbers. Some years ago, I would say almost 20 years ago, but this figure should be, I would say, applicable approximately to nowadays. It was concluded that about 1%, some people say 3% of the gross domestic product of developed countries is invested in chemical analysis. And the word is investment because these communities invest their time and their money in this analysis because they know that these analyses are very important to take relevant decisions. If we take the gross domestic product of the European Union from last year, it is 312 euros per inhabitant per year that is invested every year in this chemical analysis. Some years ago, the Institute for Reference Measurements and Materials also checked the European Union legislation, which is one of the cornerstones of our union, and conclude that 25% of all European legislation indicates the chemical analysis, both quantitative and qualitative chemical analysis. And so 1/4 of all legislation is produced in a way that products and materials are checked for their chemical composition. These figures are very impressive, but we can add to this list the fact that we know that individual and public health is managed through chemical analysis, or many of the parameters checked in this management are chemical parameters. And we should also mention that many research and developments in chemistry or in other areas, in physics, in archaeology, rely on the result from some chemical analysis for the quality of alloys used in physical studies or in biology. So chemical analysis are also very important for research and development. So therefore, we need reliable and objective chemical analysis results to make sure that all these analyses will contribute to solve the problem that needs to be faced in all these areas. I would like now to list some very challenging research that can be done, or work and research that can be done by metrology in chemistry, to highlight how difficult it can be to implement this idea of objectiveness and reliability. For instance, if we want to assess the trend of the composition of a river from one year to another, we will need to develop tools to quantify the mean concentration of a nutrient, typically in a large area of the river. And this comparison is affected by the seasonality of the river, of course. But if we analyze this area of the river in similar weather conditions and in similar seasons, we can skip this factor in this comparison. But then we have the heterogeneity of the system, and the area of the river can be much wider than the one that you see in the picture. And then we have to know how the coordinates of the samples that are collected in this area and how the uncertainty of the sample analysis together will affect the estimated mean value of the composition in this area of the river. And this is very relevant because only after knowing the mean value of the composition of the river, typically, for instance, a nutrient concentration, if we want to assess the trend, we must know the uncertainty associated with this mean concentration, which is very challenging. Another typical problem that most of you face in your labs is how can we compare the efficiency of two catalysts? The quantification of efficiency of two catalysts is affected by the control of many experimental conditions. But then we have also the uncertainty from the analysis of the component that has its concentration decrease through the photodegradation. So we should be able to quantify these kinetic constants with uncertainty to make sure that you can compare the values from different catalysts and to decide in an objective way which one of those is the best. Another problem that you can face in metrology in chemistry that is not so applied to a specific case is to understand what is the impact of calibrators and signals correlation in instrumental quantification uncertainty. So most of us prepare calibrators for instrumental quantifications by diluting the same stock solution. This will introduce a correlation between the values of the calibrators that also affects signals correlation, and we should be able to understand how this correlation affects the calibration and the interpolated concentration of a known sample in this calibration curve. This is also a relevant problem that was also studied by our group. And now let me discuss some principles or the key concepts for measurements in chemistry, or to make sure that measurements in chemistry are reliable, objective, and fit for a specific purpose. The two concepts are traceability and uncertainty. So measurement traceability and measurement uncertainty. The measurement traceability concept is even more important than I would say the uncertainty concept, because it is related with the reference used for the analysis. And in some chemical fields, for instance, the analysis of trace levels of compounds, trace levels of organic compounds in complex matrices, you have some problems with the quality of references. For instance, if in pesticide residue analysis in foodstuffs, you can use standards with the same claimed purity, imagine 99%, but if you compare the content of the standards, the difference can reach up to 30%, because how this purity was quantified in some cases as some fragilities, some problems. They miss some impurities in these calculations. Typically, you can check or see this difference if you have a standard whose purity was checked by GCFID or QNNMR, where QNMR is, of course, the best technology to quantify the content of these standards. And then the measurement uncertainty. The measurement uncertainty is also challenging because in chemistry we perform rather complex analysis with lots of steps and mass transfer steps, which make this assessment rather demanding. Some people believe that just taking a standard deviation from replicate measurements is enough to quantify the uncertainty, but this is very wrong, because you have to take into account also models for the systematic effects. Okay, and then you'll get this confidence interval, that is the measured value, minus plus typically an uncertainty that should include the true value of the measured quantity with a non-confidence level. Okay, and typically there are different approaches. The two classes of approaches that are more popular for labs are the so-called bottom-up approach and in-house top-down approach. A bottom-up approach involves a detailed assessment of the different uncertainty components. And if you want to do this, you must know how to model different uncertainty components that can be analytical steps or effects, like temperature effect, acid concentration in some cases. So you must know how to deal with quantification of these components. The combination is rather trivial, but the quantification of some components is not so trivial. Okay, this is demanding, but in the end you will quantify a measurement uncertainty that is not very overestimated, and you will be able to collect the information required to optimize the measurement process by reducing the uncertainty or the cost of analysis, because you know which are the major and the minor uncertainty components that can be managed to optimize the measurement process. Okay, I know this is demanding. We have some tutorials and some user-friendly tools that allow to apply it in some situations, but if you want to make your life easier, you can go to these in-house top-down uncertainty evaluations, where you just need anymore to know all details of the measurement process, the steps, and how to quantify the different uncertainty components. You just need to quantify precision and assess the trueness of the measurement procedure, and by this way, in a rather simple way, you can quantify the measurement uncertainty. This uncertainty will be overestimated by this pragmatic way of dealing with uncertainty components, but if you don't want to optimize the process, you just want to have a rather acceptable quantitative value of the uncertainty, it should be okay. And then you can use it to compare results of different samples and so on. Okay, this can be as simple as you see in this slide. Okay, if you have no lack of linearity issues, if your measurements are above 2 times limit of quantification, if the trueness is checked from the analysis of samples spiked with a negligible uncertainty, typically samples without native analyte. Okay, if you assume all these assumptions, ideally you should check it. Your result with uncertainty will be the initial estimate, typically concentration, divided by the mean recovery. The mean recovery, the recovery is the ratio between the estimated value and the spiked value of the sample. You can check even for one sample if it is above 2 times limit of quantification, and then the uncertainty will be 2 times that corrected concentration, corrected for recovery, and then you have the square root of the variance of between days precision, also known as intermediate precision. So it will be the variance of the intermediate precision, and then you have the variance of recovery values, typically also collected in different days, divided by the number of recovery tests. This should be okay in some cases. Okay, but if you want to produce more detailed uncertainty models, or if you want to perform top-down uncertainty evaluations where the previous assumptions are not valid, you can use tutorials and user-friendly spreadsheets that were developed to guide analysts in how to perform these uncertainty evaluations. So this research involves novel tools, development of novel tools for the most demanding problems. For instance, you have a new standard addition method with cumulative addition that is very good for electrochemical analysis with small volumes, where you cumulatively add your stock solution, and you have the tool to calculate the uncertainty from that quantifications. You have tools on how to evaluate the uncertainty from reverse sampling. You have Monte Carlo simulations of the more complex and correlated calibrations that can be easily implemented, can be used by analysts with no advanced knowledge on metrology. Okay, you have a tutorial to guide you in setting a least square calibration. So you have many tools to allow you to perform complex bottom-up uncertainty evaluations. We call it democratization of these complex uncertainty evaluations. Okay, and now let's go to examinations in chemistry. We have also very nice and relevant challenges to be faced by this qualitative analysis. Some examples of problems that could be studied are some examples is to assess if the identification criteria of doping substance in urine of athletes set by WADA, if these criteria are reliable or are perfect. In fact, WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, they have some guidelines on how to prove that a specific substance is in a urine of an athlete by GCMS or LCMS, but the criteria are harmonized, and the problem is that these criteria are not based on the performance that you see in your lab and that you see for a specific analyte, are I would say too harmonized, which can be a problem because you know that depending on design of your equipment, the performance of your equipment at a specific day and the analyte, you'll have different GCM, SMS results quality. And so we could be interested in studying that. We have done that, of course, because I listed it as an example. Another example is are microplastics identification by microFT reliable? Many analysts that perform this analysis, they rely on the match value estimated by the software of their equipment, their expensive equipment, but in some cases that match is not so reliable as they wish. So it could be interesting to quantify how good identification is and to develop alternative algorithms and strategies to make sure that identification of these microplastics is in fact adequate. So the two major concepts in examination in examinations in chemistry are, of course, traceability and uncertainty as for measurement, but in this case traceability refers to a reference for the qualitative analysis. For instance, in identification by GCMS, you can use a NIST library or you can produce your own reference spectra, and of course your own reference spectra is much better than a spectra from the library because your own reference spectra were collected with your equipment, with that specific design, and with that specific ionization conditions. So in different chemical analysis, you must know how to produce or how to select the adequate reference for qualitative analysis, and also to be able to report to the end user of your result, to report about the reference that was used in your analysis, to allow them to understand how good was your assessment. And the uncertainty in qualitative analysis. Uncertainty in qualitative analysis, in examinations, easier to say. In this analysis, uncertainty can be easily expressed through a contingency table. So you can inform about how good is your examination procedure by presenting a table where you have the number of negative and positive cases that were studied. So typically a positive case is the presence of analyte in your sample, and negative case is the absence of the analyte in your sample. And in this table you inform people how many of positive cases produced positive results or negative results, and how many of the negative cases produce negative results and positive results. And by this table you can quantify and express and report the number of true positives, true negatives, false positives, and false negatives. So these 4 parameters allows the end user to understand how good is your identification method or procedure. But an alternative metric to quantify the examination uncertainty that combines all relevant parameters in one metric usually used, that is called likelihood ratio. Likelihood ratio is the ratio between true positive and false positive results, right? If it is a likelihood for positive cases, positive results, and if we assume that negative cases and positive cases are equally likely, this likelihood ratio has a specific meaning, then interpretation is easier to understand. Assuming that assumption, we can conclude that if our positive result is associated with a likelihood ratio of 1000, we can say that the positive result is 1000 times more likely true than false. For instance, in forensic analysis, examination result to be binding, to be conclusive, typically the likelihood ratio associated with that result should be at least 1 million. For microplastic analysis, you don't need to go so high about likelihood ratio. But this is a very nice metric based on Bayesian statistics. But this metric has a problem. You have to quantify the false positive results rate, which is not so easy. So the false positive result rate can be very difficult to quantify through experimentation when the identification method is very selective. So imagine if you have a method with a procedure with a false positive result rate of 0.5%, typically you will need to analyze 2000 to 4000 negative cases to get uh, 10 or 20 false positive results that allow you to quantify this rate in a rather reliable way, which is too much for most labs, for most types of tests. And if you have in mind that GCM SMS can be much more selective than this, you can conclude that you cannot feed this likelihood ratio equation through experimentation. A solution to that problem is modeling. If you develop models of an instrumental signal, okay, and this is only applicable to instrumental identifications. So if you develop models of the instrumental signal, and these models are rather demanding because some signals are correlated and so on, and the precision varies with the value of the analyte. Okay, but if you are able to produce these signal models, you can estimate and simulate the probability of the signal nodes producing by chance a false positive result, and then you can quantify how good is your identification. Identification close to limit of detection will not be perfect, but if you go up larger than limit of quantification, and these are quantitative limits, probably identification will be okay. We also have done some work in this area, and like in metrology and chemistry, the idea was to develop tools to solve the most demanding analytical problems, and then together with this work, spreadsheets that allow the implementation of developed tools are provided. So in the end, all these complex evaluations can be easily used in routine by any analyst. We have recently done a work on microplastic identification. Vanessa will describe it in a few minutes, and then we also have done some work in direct and indirect doping analysis to try to improve the reliability of these identifications, and we also have done some work on the analysis of pesticide residues in foodstuffs. And for instance, in doping analysis, we concluded that the criteria defined by WADA to identify compounds are so strict to avoid the false positives that in the end you get very high false negative results rates. So in some cases, if the doping substance is in the urine, there is a chance that a chance of 40% or 35% that you will report the absence of the substance due to these problems with the identification criteria. So, what can we conclude? We can conclude we already knew that the balance between dizziness of analysis and their adequacy is difficult, but now we can say that it is not so difficult to do it right. There are some user-friendly tools produced not only by our research group but for other research groups, and there are also some guides that can help you in producing reliable um, quantitative and qualitative chemical analysis results. And the idea is to democratize the good practice, good analytical practices, because we all need uh, to have good chemical analysis results. So thank you very much for your attention.